One of the wildest trade deadlines in NBA history has just passed, and a lot of Toronto Raptors fans are confused about the direction of the organization because despite the underwhelming season we've had so far, they decided to enter this trade deadline as buyers. So I'll recap everything that went on today as well as what Masai Ujiri had to say about the entire NBA trade deadline situation, as there were a lot of questions he had to answer and he kind of revealed what the Raptors' plan is going forward. So we'll discuss all of that, and one thing I think a lot of people aren't really mentioning in regards to something the Toronto Raptors fumbled today, at least in my opinion. So lots of stuff to break down. Let's just jump straight into it. And Woj put it best, right? Woj sort of put it out there pretty solidly that the Raptors never turned out to be sellers, adding Spurs center Jakob Poeltl on deadline day. They'll have to make some harder decisions in the offseason, but Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster tested and learned more about the value of several players on their rosters. So the Raptors, despite all the reports about them having a bunch of assets that a lot of teams would be interested in, right? A lot of guys that could potentially be moved for 3+ first-round picks. They actually went out and were buyers and acquired, for people that didn't see it, Jakob Poeltl in a deal where they sent out Khem Birch, a 2024 lightly protected picks 1 through 6 first-round pick and 2 second-round picks. Now, this is a deal I was pretty happy about in the moment, and I still am now at this point, and I'll explain why as this video goes along. But Jakob Poeltl obviously is a guy that protects the rim. He's a 7-footer. He's a solid defender. 12 points per game, 9 rebounds. 3 assists. This Masai talked about his passing improving and stuff. Is efficient from around the rim, and this guy that's been with the organizations. Close friends with Pascal Siakam. The shooting is very questionable. He's not going to improve us on that area, but he definitely fills a giant hole the Toronto Raptors have had at the center position in recent seasons. And the fact that we didn't have to give up a guy like Gary Trent Jr., even a guy like Delano Banton to acquire Jakob Poeltl, I thought that trade was an absolute W. But like many other Raptors fans, there was still a lot of holes, a lot of things that need to be addressed about this Raptors roster that we thought might be solved this year's trade deadline. But unfortunately, for a lot of people, and I'd say unfortunately for just the Raptors in general, no other moves went down, and the Raptors sort of stood pat with everything that happened. Now, Masai Ujiri, there was a lot of questions. He gave a press conference immediately following this year's trade deadline, and he gave us some indication in terms of the direction of this team's going in. So I'll add that context before I really summarize and give my opinion on everything that went on. But Masai Ujiri was asked whether he feels like he can re-sign 3 of the likely unrestricted free agents that they have this summer in VanVleet, Trent, and Poeltl. He says, "We're always focused on trying to retain our players. We'll see how we perform for the rest of the season and make that assessment." So this is the big thing that a lot of people were criticizing regarding Masai Ujiri's acquisition of Jakob Poeltl today, because we all knew, or a lot of people known, that Fred VanVleet and Gary Trent Jr. were both unrestricted free agents. If they turned down their player options, could be unrestricted free agents this offseason, meaning they could leave for nothing. So the Raptors would have to dish out the dough in order to keep some of their guys. But we brought in Jakob Poeltl, who is also in that situation. So now we have 3 guys that could potentially leave the Toronto Raptors for nothing this offseason. So I even said it in the initial reaction of the video, I believe, the Jakob Poeltl trade is a W if we're able to keep him around for future seasons, assuming we'll be able to keep him on the roster of future years. If we're just having him as sort of a 3-month rental, that is a massive L for the Toronto Raptors. But the fact Ujiri says his plan, his focus is to retain all of our guys is encouraging. And the fact that he's not saying or not dodging the question about bringing back our players. And I know a lot of people want to see Fred VanVleet go. That'll be its whole own discussion, whole own video, but it seems like the Raptors want to maintain their guys, want to keep their guys around. And that leads us into the next quote from Masai, as he suggested the market was quieter than expected today and thinks that anything that they could have done today, they could have also done during the off season. And in the summer, there's 29 losers and 1 winner. There's 29 teams looking to do more. He used that in the context saying that, there's a few teams during the trade deadline that are really trying to improve their roster, whereas in the summer, it's everyone. No one's won the championship, so everyone's trying to shake up their team. And I think that's a little bit disingenuous, especially how this trade deadline has gone, because you can have sellers, you can have buyers in the summer. Maybe not disingenuous, but I think there's a lot of buyers, and he's kind of ignoring the fact that it felt like there was more trades than ever in this year's trade deadline that went down. And there was an arms race going on in the Western Conference, especially with the acquisitions of Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and all the minor deals that went down. So but he says a lot of the deals that could happen could go on in the summer. And we did get a little inside look at one of the offers, or one of the asking prices the Raptors had for the Golden State Warriors, because one of the rumors that popped up from Shams of The Athletic ahead of this year's trade deadline was that the Raptors were they could potentially trade OG Anunoby to the Golden State Warriors. And basically the report is that the Raptors wanted Kuminga and other players as well as picks in return for OG Anunoby. Now, most Raptors fans would figure that's the baseline asking price. That's if the Warriors want to play at the table with the Toronto Raptors for a piece like OG, Kuminga, picks, and players would be the prerequisite, right? That's what a deal would potentially go down for at that point. But the Warriors didn't want to play ball, so I don't know why Shams came out and said like they were a serious trade partner, trade contender. But if that's sort of the asking price, I get why Masai Ujiri is sort of saying, hey, these deals will be here in the summer. So that makes sense why Masai Ujiri didn't sort of sell low on some of our guys. Maybe some of the reports were inflated in terms of the asking prices. We don't really know, as people just reading all the tea leaves and all the reports that have come out. But Masai also had to say this about this team. Essentially, I think sometimes we went too individual, Ujiri says about the team's lack of focus this year, and points to quick success last season. Masai says he will name what the team needs in the offseason. It's a no-nonsense approach we have to have now. So that's sort of the really other big quote, the big takeaway I took from Masai Ujiri's comments, that he wants this roster to win. He wants to give this team, and a lot of the reports leading up to the trade deadline indicated the Raptors weren't sure about how to evaluate this current team, because there's a lot of talent on it. There's a lot of individual pieces that are really good that overachieved last season. They did really well. Fifth in the Eastern Conference is a very young squad without a true center, and he sort of said, hey, we got Jakob Poeltl now. There are no more excuses, because he talked about how when discussing things with management, and how it was on him a little bit as well, that if we had a center, he directly quoted this, if we had a center, if we had this, we'd be winning these games. So they got the center, and now they feel like they can properly evaluate the talent to see if they can build a winner out of the current roster that they have. So we'll see if that actually could end up going down, if that could be the season flipping. And the Raptors, if they come in with what, as Kareem Kareem wrote in the tweet, but there's a no-nonsense approach. They don't want this any more excuses, no more silly stuff going on. The Raptors are trying to win some more games, and they won't. They have their center now, and while they still don't have the shooting around or the bench, right? It's we'll see what ends up happening. So that's the sort of approach from Masai Ujiri, and honestly, I'm here for it. I'm here for it, because the Toronto Raptors, if you look at it, right, we've had a weird season so far. It feels like at some points we're tanking. It felt earlier in the season, we're the middle of the pack of the East, a team that's going to compete with the best of the best, as we sort of did last year. So bringing in a center to sort of rejuvenate things, yes, it's not probably as big of a shakeup as a lot of people were hoping, given how off the vibes were with the team. I've seen a lot of people discuss the vibes of the Toronto Raptors, even I myself had, just from the eye test of watching the games on TV, right? We have that little bit of a shakeup now, so there's a little bit of kick, a little sense of urgency from the team at this point. And as Masai said, if things don't work out, they'll shake things up in the summer. Anything that they could have done at this year's trade deadline, they could definitely do during the summer. So we'll see what ends up happening. And he sort of talked about the selfishness of certain players, right? I think we got a little bit too individual. That might be a little direct quote at OG Anunoby at this point. So I don't know if shots are fired there, but again, I think the Toronto Raptors definitely should have acquired some players, especially with the number of guys that were dealt out for second-round picks. I know we gave a couple seconds to acquire Jakob Poeltl, but guys like Bones Highland, guys like Eric Gordon, Luke Kennard, there was a lot of dudes out here that could have come into the Toronto Raptors bench, legitimate NBA players, and they're only dealt for a couple of second-round picks, and would have helped sort of the issues we especially have in our backcourt right now, where Fred VanVleet's playing like 100 minutes a night. So I think the Raptors fumbled that sort of area there. And there's a specific thing. I might do a whole video on another thing that I missed, that I saw that I think the Raptors fumbled on. But the Raptors, while they should have revamped the bench, in my opinion, a little bit, given how all the offers were going out there, some of the deals that went down, I'm cool with this direction, because if you look at the Raptors' schedule now for they're currently the 10th seed, but while we are the 10th seed, the play-in is still there. So you have your safety net. You can work your way in if you don't really get it. But they're only, what are we? 3 games back, 4 games back of the 7th seed, right? Miami's there 3.5 games back, 4.5 games back of those teams there. So it's not like there's an insurmountable gap the Raptors have to sort of get back into the playoff picture. You go on a little win streak, the Nets or something, the Heat, one of these teams go on a little losing streak, and you're right back in the middle of the East. So Jakob Poeltl re-energizes the group. You can do that, and the Raptors have one of the easiest schedules in the league to end off the year, right? You look at it, and the Jazz, who just sold a bunch of their players, the Pistons, the Magic, the Pelicans, who have been good. The Pistons, then you got the Cavs, but the Bulls, the Wizards. Like, there's a lot of these teams the Raptors can beat. There's a lot of Charlotte Hornets games, Pacers games, Pistons games out there that the Raptors should be able to get some W's. So if this team can rake up a few little wins, energize the fan base a little bit, then maybe we won't be criticizing Masai Ujiri, because I don't think anyone would complain about giving away a first-round pick, even with the light protections, if we're going to be a playoff team. I mean, Jakob Poeltl is worth, especially if we can keep him around. It's a steal if we give up sort of a mid-20s, late 20s draft pick, to acquire Jakob Poeltl just straight up, even regardless of the protections on it. So I think that deal was still a nice move. The Raptors can get back in the middle of the East, keep tweaking, keep improving, and figure out their stuff for the offseason. I'm bought in on this team, even if I think we should have revamped the bench. Now, this could get ugly for the Toronto Raptors if they don't really turn things around, if they maintain the inconsistencies and the issues that they've had throughout the season. And I could see a lot of Raptors fans expressing extreme frustration if we lose a few more games. But I'm cool with the Raptors trying to win. Instilling a losing culture when you don't have to is not the smart thing to do. So we'll see what happens for this Raptors team. Lots of videos going to be coming on Raptors Digest. And if you guys are interested in betting on the Toronto Raptors, because now's the time. The Raptors bet on themselves, and you guys can bet on them now as well using the Cool Bet Sports Book. The link is down in the description below to sign up. And if you're interested in sports betting, they can bet on every single Toronto Raptors game, NBA game, or really any sport in general. And get some great lines, special futures regarding this team, so regarding the NBA. So if you are interested in sports betting, use the link down below. It helps us out big time, and Cool Bet's been really good at the channel, so they'll be really good to you guys as well. But folks, we'll keep you updated if anything new comes out. I'm gonna make a whole video on one thing I think the Raptors missed. Probably record that right after this one. But you guys are the best. I'm signing out. Cheers.